Good afternoon. Today is the 24th day of January 2016, and we are continuing with our series Explorations in Savitri. Still on Canto 4, The Kingdoms of the Little Life, and I believe we'll be there for a while.
Yes.
As always, it is an honor to be with Alok. Namaskar. We ended yesterday with quotes from Narad, I am here, I am here. And the last thing was on everybody's lips was the eager question, how far Savitri? But Savitri was not his sole occupation. Savitri alone, which was the preoccupation nearest to his heart, will one day fire the imagination of the world by its sheer bulk and beauty of profound images, vivid words, felicitous and daring expressions, every detail of which he took sculptor-like pains to develop. The first book itself went through 10 revisions, and had he been able to maintain the same godlike labor throughout, or had he not been compelled to lean on the support of a weak and at times unwilling assistant, required to keep pace with his divine energy, Savitri would have seen the light of day before his own life's light had withdrawn. But alas, this was not to be. We will continue in our next evening, which will be Thursday, this coming Thursday.
Yes.
So we're on page 140.
Here, of course, Nirodha is referring to the fact that Savitri was printed in two parts. And the first came out in 1950, which was part 1, which contained book 1, 2, 3.
Which Sri Aurobindo actually proofread.
Yes. Now, it's very interesting also because if you see closely, book 1, 2, 3, book 3 is the book of the Divine Mother and it ends with, the vision and the boon. So, Sri Aurobindo's own part of the story.
Yes.
And he saw and proofread before, as Nirodha puts it, like physically he withdrew. But the next part, which is the mother's side of the story, and the rest of it came in 1951. So Savitri was published in two parts, 50 and 51.
50 and 51.
Which Nirodha is referring to. Now, we are on a very interesting subject, and Sri Aurobindo him only can make such a thing like little life so interesting.
Yes. Yes.
We have there are several categories of vision that we can experience. One, of course, we all know, familiar with the most material vision. So we look at objects materially and we can augment it with the microscope or telescope, etc. But it's essentially a material vision. It looks at the surfaces of things. Then there is still deeper, subtle vision, which yogis begin to develop. And they can see the occult phenomenon, the occult forces at play, and so on and so forth. At third level is the spiritual vision, which a person who has become one with the self sees. He sees the self everywhere, the self in all beings. And it's a profound vision. One may be a seer of the self and yet not have the occult vision. The two need not go together. And one may have the occult vision and not yet be a seer of the self. So all possibilities are there. But beyond all these, there is the divine vision. Whether we may call it the supramental vision if you like. And in that vision, all these are seen together. Not only together, but also in their interconnectedness in terms of space and interconnectedness in terms of time. This is the supramental vision. It's very difficult to express it in words. That's why the mother says that human language and human consciousness is not yet evolved to express the supramental state. because you see the three movements of time. Several places here in Savitri, even in this canto,
Yes.
we are actually seeing the three spaces of time come together. When Shobindu is describing the cell, he is also describing the future. He is also describing the past and how it is existing in the cell. It is actually a vision which is called in India as Trikal Drishti. Very often people confuse this, triple time vision or the Trikal Drishti to mean that the person is a soothsayer. He predicts about what's going to happen after a few years in your life and what happened, a few years in your past. That is not Trikal Drishti. That's only a very brief kind of clairvoyance, if you like. But Trikal Drishti is very different. It sees how from the origin of time and takes you right up to its ultimate culmination. And all this compressed in a single moment. Shobindo's one of those innocent poems on Kiki the cat contains this. It's amazing. And very often the poem is quoted semi-humorously that, it's on Kiki the cat. But what does Shobindu write? He says toward the end, at one of the lines he says, mystery of the miracle of the fur-footed Brahman. He's actually seeing Brahman become a cat. Now look, this vision contains all this together. Then he says something very interesting, whether she is a spirit, a woman, or a cat. This is the mystery I am wondering at. Because he is seeing all these three together. She is a spirit, so what if she is a cat? She is a woman going to be in the future, and mother did confirm.
Mother did confirm.
When Kiki left, she used to go into trances. Yeah. Sometimes sitting on, on chair next to mother, on a footstool, sometimes on Shobindu's chair. And when Shobindu would come, he would never, even as much as indicate that, it's his chair. He would quietly sit on the edge of the chair. Yet to see masters like that, who would quietly sit on the edge of the chair because a little cat is, sleeping there. But
mother said she was ready for
human birth. And then she would go into trances. And then when she left the body, Shobindu himself came down, Shobindu and the mother. And he would also take out the, those things from the fish and feed the cat. And he has also cryptically remarked about it, that how supramental consciousness acts. And he says, when I take out, the flesh of the fish and leave out the bone and I give it to the fish, to an outward vision, it will look okay. He is just feeding the fish, and somebody may even say, oh, he was attached to a cat. But he says it's for a totally different reason. Now, I'm sure Shobindu was not feeding the cat only fish, but something else.
Yes.
And when she took a human birth, mother testified that Kiki has already taken a human birth. It's a woman, but a very early stage, very early primitive, beginnings of human life. Now, Shobindu sees all this compressed in a single moment and he says whether she is a spirit, a woman or a cat. So this is one part of it. Second is when we understand human life and its problems, we understand it depending on the vision. So material vision will be that it's a material problem. Occult vision will be it's an occult problem. Spiritual vision is that it's a problem of ignorance, awaken. But how does the divine vision see it? Shobindu says in one of his writings towards the end, 1949, the problem is dual, corporeal and psychological. So problem is not just in the inner being. All who have tried to correct humanity has looked at, oh, this is a problem of character, moral problem. Humanity is suffering from moral problem. Sometimes moral indigestion, which is very dangerous, and sometimes the other swing, moral depravity, moral poverty. And then the solutions are make human beings morally strong by cultivating the sattvic nature. But we know how fragile sattvic nature is. In Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, who is such a paragon of virtues, never speaks a lie, ends up putting on the dice his kingdom, his brothers and even his wife, not realizing what he is doing. And Shobindu quotes this example to say that even a most cultured sattvic man, this is not perfection. So where is the problem? The problem is cellular. And what is the solution? The solution is supramental. So this is the beauty. And we see now how beautifully he is stating the problem. Although on earth are firm, established lives. This is how we think. A working of habit or a sense of law, a steady repetition in the flux. What we call as firm, established lives. Now here there is a very subtle, gentle irony. Although on earth are firm, established lives. That's how we look at ourselves. What is it? Habit, flux, or a law under which we labor, but we don't realize it.
And a repetition, no less.
Repetition. So here there is a steady repetition in the flux, yet are its roots of will ever the same. That's why at one place, we are often disgusted by so-called sin in humanity. And Sri Aurobindo says there are only two things which are unpardonable. They look like unpardonable. And he says that meanness and selfishness. Two sins. And then he says, yet these two are universal. Hence these two must be pardoned. Roots are ever the same. Two sins. Meanness and selfishness. And then he says, and yet these are universal. Therefore, these two must be pardoned. So, roots of will are ever the same. Where is that, these passions are the stuff of which we are made. Once Nirodha told him that I am having this boil, and so there was a lot of humorous banter. Sri Aurobindo gave him, okay, you repeat this mantra. First he sent a rhyme. Oh, blessed, blessed boil within my nostril. Oh, how dost thou make my boss trill? So it was paining. So Sri Aurobindo said, oh, please chant this mantra. Om tat atat, tat atat, T-U-T. So it's not tat. Tat is T-A-T. So Nirodha writes to him next day, I tried it, sir, but it didn't work. I mean, he took it very seriously. So Sri Aurobindo further continues. He doesn't say that, you took this seriously. He says, I didn't tell you what is the way to chant it. He says you have to call 4 Brahmins who don't have a pot belly and are free of sex thoughts in the mind. Now look, how Sri Aurobindo in humor is taking such a dig at human nature that it's Brahmins think they are very superior because they are born of a high caste. And those days, now of course everything is level, but those days to cut a joke on Brahmin, I mean, if there are people walking nearby who were so-called, not belonging to that caste, you are not allowed. You can't touch, you can't come near. And he says, call those Brahmin. Where are those Brahmins?
4 no less.
4 who don't have a pot belly and are free of sex thoughts. So it's his way of saying to Nirodha that, it's universal human nature. And then of course he tells him that how to do it. So that's the other part. So roots are ever the same. These passions are the stuff of which we are made. This was the first cry of the awaking world. Where did they come from? They have not come today. It's not this man, that person. They came when out of matter and mud, life awoke. First cry. So that first cry continues to linger in the cells. It clings around us still and clamps the God. Even actually the gods are subject to it. And within us, the emerging God, it clamps, it draws us back again and again. Even when reason is born and soul takes form, in beast and reptile and in thinking man, it lasts and is the fount of all their life. Even in thinking man, it lasts. Do what you may. It is there in the very cells. That's what today, Deora had got this little thing from Agenda, where mother says, fear, it's in the very cells, fear of death. You can intellectually argue everything, but it's there in the very cells. The problem is cellular. That's why he went into all this cellular yoga, because without this, there is no real possibility of divine life on earth. You can at the most have a very beautiful inner being, which is, of course, countless times it has been tried. But the moment you take a material sheath, you take all these issues. So here it is.
And he ends that with a period, and then the next line is also a period.
Yes.
Full stop.
Yes. This too was needed, that breath and living might be. It had its purpose.
Yes.
That was the origin. This spirit in a finite, ignorant world must rescue so its prisoned consciousness, forced out in little jets at quivering points from the inconscient's sealed infinitude. So when a king is in prison, he has to start with obeying the most menial of the jailers. He has to first start please them. That's how people get out of the prison. Then when they are confident, then they say, okay, you are allowed this much freedom. Slowly, slowly. He can't straight away assert his kingliness. They will say, all right, you labor forever. So slowly, 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 consciousness develops. Like a child who begins to walk, starts with first stumbling step, falls. But the same child may develop into a great climber, mountain climber.
That's where jets, Sri Aurobindo
Yes,
uses more than
jets. Yes, because these impulses in the animal world and the human world,
Yes.
they are literally like pricks, jets. And suddenly that's why they can even sway the mind of the sage. That's how the Gita puts it, because they come like a jet. Now, jet is something which is sudden and it flows and hits you, and it's like a powerful jet is literally a powerful energy which suddenly comes and then it dies down. So these are jets. Then slowly it gathers mass, looks up at light. This nature lives tied to her origin. A clutch of nether force is on her still. Out of unconscious depths, her instincts sleep. A neighbor is a life to insentient naught. Under this law, an ignorant world was made. So this is the problem. So we can take the question to the next level. But who created the problem? Why this has happened? Why this was allowed? So see the simultaneity of the vision. It's only in expression that you have to express successively. That's what the mother says. That, this is a big problem, that when you express the supramental vision, you are forced to express it successively. So we see the next level of expression, but all this is a simultaneous vision. And what is this vision? In the enigma of the dark and vasts, in the passion and self-loss of the infinite, when all was plunged in the negating void, non-being's night could never have been saved if being had not plunged into the dark, carrying with it its triple mystic cross.
Yeah, let's talk about that mystic
We'll
cross.
talk. In fact, he explains it in the next 3 lines. So the thing is that if there was no soul, if everything was mechanical, there was no problem. Material energy playing with material energy. The problem is, along with this material energy, these roots, there is also the soul element. That creates the issue. If there was only matter and nature playing within itself, it's all right. But because of the presence of the psychic element, as we have read that, we are stung by the infinite within. And that goads us. The soul leaps out at transient things. This is the problem. So why this divine went into this? It is saying to rescue nature, to rescue matter out of its plunge into inconscience.
Being with a capital B.
Yes. And that it speaks about the triple mystic cross. As we know, we have cross, of course, is the very famous Christian symbol. And Mother at one place says that it was adopted later on. Obviously, Christ himself never used a cross. He was, but the cross is a symbol which was adopted. And there are 2 ways that Sri Aurobindo has described it. One is it's like the transcendent, the universal, and the individual. So these 3 together. And the transcendent entering into the universal and the individual, now he has to bear, not just, he cannot remain only there. He has entered into the play of the universe, and he has further entered into the individual atomic existence and sentient life and life of bird and beast and stone. So he is there. Now the moment that transcendent is here, he cannot avoid the responsibility, and this is why he plunged into it, so that he can rescue it. So it applies to Christ, because Christ brought the divine love upon earth and himself bore the burden of humanity. That's how he said that I have washed away the sins of others with my blood. There is a deep mystic truth in it, but a truth which is badly misrepresented when we say that, well, just because I am baptized I am free. That is obviously absurd. But if we truly believe, and Mother speaks about it, she says, if you simply have faith about the divine sacrifice in matter, this she describes about the future world. She says that who will be saved? Those who are open to the new forces, etc. Then she says that, well, it's not easy for human beings. She says, to give you hope and courage, I must tell you that there are those who are endowed with faith. Faith in the divine sacrifice into matter. The divine has sacrificed himself into matter. By this power of faith alone, they will be saved. She's used this, but she has put it in the right perspective. If you have that faith that the divine has plunged into matter, he is carrying it, rescuing it, what is called as the avatar in India, then that faith itself is such a powerful lever that it augments the action of the divine, which is active in the material universe. So this is the symbol of the cross, the divine with this cross plunging into darkness, unconsciousness. Then why triple? So here he says the three aspects of the divine which have plunged into it. So it becomes the triple mystic cross, invoking in world time the timeless truth, bliss changed to sorrow, the first cross. The all blissful chose to become insensible, take the burden of suffering. Bliss changed to sorrow. Knowledge made ignorant. The all-knowing chose to become ignorant, laboring, struggling. God's force turned into a child's helplessness. God's force is there in the stone, turned into a child's helplessness. Can bring down heaven by their sacrifice. So this is the triple we see, and of course Mother speaks about it later on. She speaks of the four beings, but it's the same thing. Sri Aurobindo at another place also speaks about four, but by and large the fourfold being. But many places we see this reference to three: bliss, knowledge, and force. And this is because in the Indian tradition we speak about Satchidananda. So Ananda is bliss, Sat is truth or pure existence, true existence, and consciousness is force, power, energy. So the Satchidananda becomes what? He becomes matter, life and mind, the insensible. So this is the triple mystic cross. The being has plunged into this darkness so that here he can establish the timeless
invoking
truth.
In world time,
Yes,
the timeless truth.
truth. And therefore, a contradiction founds the base of life. The eternal, the divine reality has faced itself with its own contraries. He is the one who is facing all this. We think we are, but deep inside, Krishna says this mystic truth. Same thing in Bible. I have taken upon myself the sins of humanity. Krishna says this in Mahabharata. He says, when humanity suffers, when creation suffers, I take that suffering onto myself. Eventually, that's where the buck stops. The last. So, we see this. The eternal, the divine reality has faced itself with its own contraries. Being became the void and conscious force, nescience and walk of a blind energy. So being, he becomes void, non-existent. Existence becomes non-existence. Non-being, this is a way of saying. Being becomes non-being, a void.
Conscious force.
Conscious force becomes nescience. Neither there is knowledge and it is a blind energy.
Yeah.
And ecstasy took the figure of world pain. So we see again the triple mystic cross. Ecstasy takes the figure of world pain. In a mysterious dispensations law. Now you see the beauty of Sri Aurobindo is, I just love this way of expression. He is revealing all the mystery. Still he uses the word mysterious. And it's very interesting because even after the mind has understood all, has it really understood?
It's still a mystery.
It's still a mystery. What would have been that moment when the being chose to plunge? If you really look at it that way, we don't really understand. But still all that we can say is that at some level we comprehend by the grace. At some level, because of a drop of that truth, that light shines and does something. And yet it is a mystery. In a mysterious dispensations law, a wisdom that prepares its far off ends, planned so to start her slow aeonic game. Again, the story of Mahabharata. How this wisdom works. Birth of Krishna, the Godhead, born in a prison. Christ, the Savior, born in a manger, no?
Yes. Yes.
Among the most ordinary common folk.
In a stable.
Stable. Those who have to deliver the Pandavas, the powerful instruments, they are born in a forest. And questions are raised about them. Meager, slow start. And all these lines give us hope. So what if our start is slow? It is He who is the spur and He is carrying us. So this is how all things start. A blindfold search and wrestle and fumbling clasp of a half-seen nature and a hidden soul. We think we know nature. We don't know. Half-seen nature. And soul is completely hidden. This is how the game starts. Half-seen, we know, we see, or the animal world experiences only its small little instincts. A game of hide and seek in toilet rooms, a play of love and hate and fear and hope continues in the nursery of mind, its hard and heavy romp of self-born twins. The self-born twins are the well-known dualities which he is just mentioning. All the dualities, in fact, love and hate, fear and hope, and all these dualities, joy and sorrow, these are the self-born twins. In the nursery of the mind it continues. Hopefully not in the graduation level of the mind. Nursery of mind is our primitive, mind which is full of these, which he will also describe, physical mind, vital mind, even a rational mind. This is a nursery of the mind. The real mind stuff has not yet really manifested. So there it continues this game. At last, now he's continuing it. You see the vision in one sweep. Where did we start from? The worm. Even before that. And where is he carrying us? What a flow. At last, the struggling energy can emerge and meet the voiceless being in wider fields. Then can they see and speak, and breast to breast in a larger consciousness, a clearer light, the two embrace and strive, and each know each, regarding closer now the playmate's face. Who are these two will meet? Nature and soul, the divine and his playmate, eternal playmate. They alone were playing in many forms. Hide and seek. We just got caught, by the way. They are the players, real players. We are the football. But we can choose to be conscious and become the player. And we can choose to be the conscious force in existence. That is the choice we can make. This is very nice. I am reminded of a little Sufi mystic poem. So the poem goes, it's in Urdu, I'll say that, and then the English translation, because there's a flavor in it. So the poet, mystic poet, is telling us, humanity, जी चाहे तो शीशा बन जा, जी चाहे पैमाना, शीशा पैमाना क्या बनना, मैं बन जा, मैं खाना बन जा. So it says, if you want, you can become glass. Glass is a material. Or you can become a cup made out of that glass. Or you can become the wine inside the glass, inside the beaker. मैं बन जा. Or you can become the storehouse where wine is, distillery. And then he says, or why you go through all this process? मैं बनकर, मैं खाना बनकर, हस्ती से बेगाना बन जा. Forget yourself. and then become diwana, totally one with that ecstasy. It's a very powerful poem. And then, just to complete that poem, because since we are at it, he says, you can become the dust of the Lord's feet. And that dust, the Lord lifts up and puts in his eyes as surma, that kajal. And then he says that awaken in yourself so much fire. Why you want to burn and bask in other fires? सीख ज़हीन के दिल से जलना, काहे को हर शम्मा पे जलना. Why you are looking for fire here and there? अपनी आग में खुद जल जाए तो ऐसा परवाना बन जा. Become such a being that you burn in the fire that burns within you. So why every time in the world contact, basically the ego is looking for deliverance. In the wrestle and in the embrace with the world, it's looking for deliverance. When it is wrestle, then after a while say, no, I am not enjoying because it's losing the game. In love, it enjoys it. But both case, you lose the ego. But why you want to do in this indirect way? Awaken that fire inside that the ego is burnt to ashes and the true being emerges. So, this whole thing somehow reminded me that at last they can see each other in a closer light and in a more intimate way. The two embrace and strive and each know each. Regarding closer now the playmate's face. It's not that nature is bad or it's, why I have got this nature. No, it's a game. Take this nature to the Lord. Offer it to the Lord. That's what she wants ultimately. She has come to us praying for deliverance. We should not complain or, turn away. That's why Mother says, share your own burden of all that is anti-divine. Mother's words. Yeah. Powerful. Even in these formless coilings he could feel. Now you see, he connects. See this Trikal Drishti. He has told us the whole thing and putting us back on focus like in a cinema, and then you zoom back and you show, even in these formless coilings he could feel matter's response to an infant stir of soul. Formless coilings.
In this Trikal Drishti, I must tell you, that when you came before Mother, spontaneously, immediately, you knew that she saw the past,
everything,
the present,
yes,
and the future.
Yes. There's so many examples of that. Absolutely. Sri Aurobindo once even told someone when he said, sir, how do you know? When he said, oh, you were Bajirao. And his brother who was a skeptic said, sir, how do you know? Because Bajirao has died long back. So Sri Aurobindo looked at him and then he said, oh, you are testing the divine. Then he told how he is going to die. Where? In the same place where Bajirao had died. And it actually happened, and then this man called him and said, you know what? You remember what Sri Aurobindo had said? This, and many lives behind and in front. So what are, this word formless coilings, somehow, it's very interesting because normally coilings, okay, you will think of a serpent and, worm, but these are not formless coilings. Formless coiling only makes me think of somehow the ribonucleic acid and the DNA in the cell. That is the first stir of formless which is taking a form of life. So Sri Aurobindo is carrying, because that's where he started, the prokaryote life. Matter's response to an infant stir of soul, in nature he saw the mighty spirit concealed, watched the weak birth of a tremendous force, pursued the riddle of Godhead's tentative pace. What a lovely line. These sometimes, these words Sri Aurobindo uses like a master artist. At one place he uses the word, in nature's instruments loiters secret God. I mean, to use the word loiter. And here he uses a very gentle word, tentative, not deliberate. Yeah. Tentative gives the feeling that it's okay. There is a certain degree of, casualness involved, even though there is thought in it. Okay, I have to go there, but let's, lolling. Lolling is a word he has used. Each lolling is a pose. It's not just a lolling. So, tentative pace. Heard the faint rhythms of a great unborn muse. So this is the vision of the total picture, and then he continues, after this initial beginnings of life in matter, then came a fierier breath of waking life, and there arose from the dim gulf of things these strange creations of a thinking sense, existences half real and half dream. So in the beginnings there is only perception, jets of energy, instincts, that's it. Then comes thinking sense. It's very interesting that there are something like a rudimentary mind, but purely a sense mind. Mind which exists only by the sensations. And it continues in a lot of people, they cannot think unless it's something like there, concretely sense. It's through the senses that thoughts arise, not without the senses. It's a very powerful mind. A life was there that hoped not to survive. Beings were born who perished without trace. Events that were a formless drama's limbs and actions driven by a blind creature will. A seeking power found out its road to form. Patterns were built of love and joy and pain and symbol figures for the moods of life. An insect hedonism fluttered and crawled. Various modes of life. And then look, insect hedonism. I mean, hedonism, of course, there are big philosophies of hedonism, and generally it's bad enough. So then to include the adjective, Sri Aurobindo is using, what an adjective, almost like the insect hedonism. Yeah. I mean, he almost reverses the whole thing and makes it appear really what really is behind this whole philosophy of hedonism, that we are here to have joy. Well, insects are also here to have joy. That kind. I mean, if we really call it really joy, insect hedonism. And basked in a sunlit nature's surface thrills and dragon raptures, python agonies. Crawled in the marsh and mire and licked the sun. Again, see the expression. How do they lick the sun? The sun is there in the mud. The light of the sun falls into the mud. They can't even lift their eyes to the sun. So they lick the sun. And it reminds me sometimes, people, in newspaper, casually something, people write, about Sri Aurobindo or anyone, something beautiful. So at one point you wonder that, really it's too cheap a place. It's not worth, and eventually these newspapers, what happens to them? They go and people use them for, all kinds of things. But even there, the lot can still work. You know how Amal Kiran got to know about Sri Aurobindo? Because there was a wrapper. Yeah. Shoes were wrapped in a newspaper in which he read about Sri Aurobindo and the mother and the ashram. And incidentally, not good things. And that attracted him. Typical Amal Kiran. Yeah. That attracted him. Oh, if this is the ashram, I must go and see. So, this you will also see sometimes as you walk through that, sometimes on the pavements, people will be selling Mother Sri Aurobindo's pictures. Put pell-mell. And they are all lying there. Sometimes you wish, people could go inside. They're nice places, lovely pictures are there, and they are lying there. But you know what? There are people who would pick up from there. You just can't. And it's the same light. So very often, I when I see it, I just think that just as the divine has chosen to become mud and matter, he has chosen to be, on the pavement in all these little photographs. So that's how in the early consciousness, it responds to that. So licked the sun. It can't yet see the sun or lift the eyes, doesn't know about sun. Still, it draws something from that energy of the sun. And it's okay. So that justifies it. Huge armored strength shook a frail, quaking ground. Great puissant creatures with a dwarfish brain and pygmy tribes imposed their small life drift. So the dinosaurs have come and the pygmy tribes, the pygmies, the small humanity. It's not small probably in size and stature. It's small within its brain, the cranium. It is not yet developed. in a dwarf model of humanity. Nature now launched the extreme experience. So here he also is not condemning. He looks upon the pygmy tribes as nature's extreme experience launching. It's a launching pad. Like, you have those space satellites launched from a base. So the pygmy tribes were the launching base for nature to carry her extreme experience. What is that extreme experience? Of Godhead in matter. This pygmy tribe will evolve into Neanderthal, and Cro-Magnon has gone, and Homo sapiens erectus, and Homo intellectualis, and Homo psychicus. Shubindo's words, not mine. He uses that, when Dilip Kumar Roy spoke about the intellect and all. He said, why do you assume that Homo intellectualis, maybe he will be wider, but Homo psychicus will be deeper and have a more sweetness and profoundness. So he has given these names. Homo intellectualis, those who approach through the mind, and Homo psychicus, those who approach through the deeper heart. These are the two species which fight with each other, like the Cro-Magnon and the Neanderthals. But they are passing species. What will eventually come is Homo supramentalisticus. That he has not said. This is my word. But that's how it goes. Cro-Magnon man and the Neanderthal fought. It doesn't matter who defeated whom. Eventually this is the humanity and both are gone. So this is the experience. And master point of a design's caprice. All this look like a caprice, and what it has created? Man. Thinking man. Luminous result of her half-conscious climb on rungs twixt her sublimities and grotesques to massive from infinitesimal shapes to a subtle balancing of body and soul to an order of intelligent littleness. Again we see how beautiful. Intelligent littleness. All this nature has done. Then we can read the last few lines. Around him, in the moment beats of time, the kingdom of the animal self arose, where deed is all and mind is still half born. How do we define an animal? We have in biology. But animal state also lingers in man. Unthinking humanity is closer to the animal kind. Deed is all. And even when we look at people only by the external, where deed is all and not the thought. So this continues. Because in the animal world there is no thought, deed. And it's natural for the animal world. But for man, the station is thought, reason. But for an animal world, it's unthinking. Where deed is all and mind is still half born. They have a mind but half born. And the heart obeys a dumb, unseen control. The force that works by the light of ignorance, her animal experiment began. Look at it, light of ignorance. Ignorance is not an absence of light, that is nescience. Ignorance is half light, half darkness. It's the grey zone between the black and the white. So this grey zone is ignorance. Completely, seemingly, of course there is no state where there is no knowledge, but a state where you can experience it like that is the inconscient. But ignorance is the first awakening of the inconscient to light. Crowding with conscious creatures, her worlds came, but to the outward only were they alive. Now see how beautifully conscious. We say, oh, I am conscious. Conscious of what? Only to the outward they were alive. Of course, later animals become aware of inner being. But in the beginning, animals are alive only to the outward. Only they replied to touches and surfaces, and to the prick of need that drove their lives, a body that knew not its own soul within, there lived and longed, had wrath and joy and grief. This is the animal life he is describing from a spiritual point of view. We could have stopped here, but we just take 5-6 lines because it will end this movement and something new will start. A mind was there that met the objective world as if a stranger or enemy at its door. See extreme paranoias where people begin to become afraid, suspicious of everybody. This is from the regression to an animal past. Animals will, the dog will bark at any unfamiliar sound. The snake will hiss. You may be a great person. Your identity card has no validity there. It will still hiss and bite you if you go near or press on the tail. So it is like at everything that is strange. And unfortunately, this state lingers even in the human being. Its thoughts were needed by the shocks of sense. All that it sees, hears, by that it thinks. Shocks. Needed. Its early mind, the sense mind, wakes up in the animal world. That's why they say very interestingly that cobras, it's very interesting, these myths or, these so-called superstition, they carry a truth inside. That if you kill a snake, the female snake, cobra, if you kill a male cobra, the female cobra captures your photograph and then will trace you wherever you are and will find you and kill you. Now, obviously, it's too much of a story to believe. But there is a truth in it. How does an animal know and trace you? One, it just captures, like a sense mind. It speaks about the sense mind in an animal world. That's all it knows. And through that sense mind and whatever that image, it has an instinct which traces you. Police can't trace you. Scotland Yard police will find it difficult. But she can trace you. Now, this is purely a sense mind, which I am not saying whether this is true or not. I really don't know. And I think it's not true. I don't know. Well, it would be fine if it is true. People, the way, they destroy life forms and kill even in cobras and all like that. But the point is that the animals have only a sense mind. And that sense mind awakens what can be called as spurts of thoughts, memories. That's all it has. It captured not the spirit in the form. It entered not the heart of what it saw. It looked not for the power behind the act. So animal mind doesn't see intent and what was really happening inside, just sees the external. It studied not the hidden motive in things, nor strove to find the meaning of it all. This is the difference between animals and man. It has nothing to do with the number of feet and horns and tail and what you eat and don't eat. It has to do simply with people who are driven by the sense mind, for whom deed is all, and based on that they form all kinds of opinions and views, who are frightened at every strange contact that, let me back off this, whatever. So they try to move in that kind of a close group, mostly a small little family or something connected, because they are afraid. Everything else is like a stranger, like animals. They move in herds. It's a herd instinct. See across Tanzania, thousands and thousands of zebras crossing together. It's a massive show of strength, like political parties. When I see them, I think of the political parties in India back home. It's very much the same. So otherwise, if they go alone, the lions called the average human being will tear them away because they do such chaotic things. But when they are in like that, like zebras, so even the lions get intimidated and they are, quietly hiding behind the bush for their chance. So this is how we have the animals with the herd instinct living, and everything else is strange, to be afraid of, to be suspicious of. So this is the animal world, which doesn't go to read what is the intent inside, what is the deeper sense of things, is there a meaning in life or not. This is not given to unthinking man. So we'll stop here and continue on Thursday.